Happy Thursday, guys, and welcome to a new edition and episode of A Seat on the Couch. I am your host, Stephanie Carnegie, founder of Totality Wellness, Inc., formerly Totality of a Woman. Tribe, it has been a couple of weeks since I've seen you guys, and of course, life happens, and everything from me having a bug on my cell phone that had my cell phone service down for almost 2 weeks to an injury that I sustained to my knee, and from me taking a week off just to have an opportunity to focus on a little bit of self-care. But I thank you guys so much for supporting, for following our journey, and for joining us again for this absolutely very, very special episode of A Seat on the Couch. September is Suicide Prevention Month, Suicide Awareness Month. That is something that I have been very vocal about on all of my platforms. We talk about suicide prevention. I share statistics and facts about suicide as it pertains to our community. So that is something that we try to use our voice and platform to amplify awareness throughout the year. But due to the fact that September is Suicide Prevention Month, we are dedicating this episode of A Seat on the Couch to bring more awareness, to have more very much so needed conversations as it pertains to suicide and the Black community. This episode specifically, although suicide plagues our communities with adults, with men, women, this particular episode is focusing on the national crisis of suicide and the Black youth. The suicide death rate among Black youth is increasing faster than any other racial ethnic group, with Black youth under the age of 13 being 2 times more likely to die by suicide than their white counterparts. Now, this does not mean that suicide does not happen and take place in these other racial and ethnic groups, because they do. There is not a race, an age, or a face that suicide cannot affect in all of our communities. But the discussion that we are having tonight is primarily focused on the fact that there is a national crisis, and we are ringing the alarm in our communities across the country that there is a crisis specifically happening in communities of color, and we are focusing on Black youth. The crisis age for suicide in communities of color is ages 5 to 11. Black adolescents are significantly less likely to receive care for depression, which is a major risk factor for suicide. We talk a lot, Tribe, about depression, about anxiety, about the signs and the symptoms appearing in Black youth as early as 5 years old. And so the research is indicating and proving that depression is a major risk factor. This evening, the information that I'm getting is coming from the Congressional Black Caucus. It's a report that was done to Congress from the National Black Caucus. They created an emergency task force on Black youth, suicide, and mental health. The chair of that organization is Representative Bonnie Watson Coleman. I know you guys have heard me talk last year that I took a trip to D.C. to attend the emergency hearing that the Congressional Black Caucus actually called, and they created a task force, an emergency task force of psychologists, educators, doctors, lawyers, researchers to come together to research and understand the connection between signs and symptoms of children who are contemplating suicide all the way to them carrying out, and the connection between health care, the lack of health care, inequalities going on in our social systems and more, to take a closer look at why is it that particularly this age group, and I'm going to say that age range again, 5 to 11. Research has indicated that there are questions being raised about whether the path from suicidal thoughts to actual attempting is understood and how much knowledge and tools there are to intervene. So what that is saying, tribe, is they know that there are not enough tools and resources and support to support the amount of mental health issues and the suicide attempts that are happening in our communities. I have spoken to councilmen and councilwomen. I have spoken to politicians, community leaders. I have spoken to mental health counselors, licensed psychologists, child psychologists, and psychiatrists, and more. But I need my parents to understand the severity and the urgency that is happening in our communities. And so for this episode of A Seat on the Couch, I didn't want to talk to psychologists. I didn't want to talk to educators. I didn't want to talk to doctors. And I didn't want to talk to therapists. My special guest this evening is Rosalyn Tyson, the mother of Trey Tyson, the 13-year-old Baton Rouge student who on October 3rd of 2019 committed suicide a week after being bullied in his school. We're going to hear from Rosalyn Tyson. She's going to share beautiful memories and stories so we can know who her son was through her eyes and why it is so urgent and important that we have these conversations, these very uncomfortable conversations that parents don't want to have, that educators don't want to have, that even sometimes community leaders and psychologists don't want to have when it comes down to the tender ages that our children are taking their lives. We want to shed hope. We want to have serious and honest conversations. We want to have reflection and look at our families and look at the conversations that we have with our children. And we want to make sure that parents do not have to bury their children who are committing suicide. So we're going to have Rosalyn join us for this conversation. Okay, guys, give me 1 second. I'm trying to get Rosalyn. Okay, there we go. While we're waiting for Rosalyn to join us, I went on live not too long ago and I asked our tribe, I asked the audience, I said, when we think about the crisis age of suicide, ages 5 to 11, I asked the audience to think about an age in your childhood between the age of 5 and 11. Pick any age in that age range and think about what your home life was like. Think about what your school life was like, life with your peers and in your community. And after you ponder over some of those thoughts, I asked you the question, what was going on in your memories of your childhood that would ever make you think of taking your own life? I asked the audience to ponder over that, to think about that when we think about children as young as 5 years old that have taken their own lives. Hello.
Hello.
Hi, Rosalyn. How are you?
How are you? Good.
Listen, let me start off by saying thank you so very much for taking the opportunity and taking the time out to join me on the couch for this important and much needed conversation. Thank you for your strength. Thank you for your courage to be able to open up and look beyond your own personal pain to want to be able to reach out and to help other families from having to experience what you have, or who may be going through things with their own children and are looking for support or trying to understand certain things. We appreciate you sharing your voice and sharing your story.
Thank you for having me.
So let me start off with asking, first of all, there's so much going on in the world right now, right? From the pandemic to the remote learning. You are a mother of four, five, one in heaven, beautiful children. So let's start off by saying, how are you guys doing? How are the kids doing? How are you guys handling, navigating through this, unprecedented and uncertain times?
Woo, one moment at a time. I can say big shout out to elementary school teachers, middle school teachers. I teach adults in this virtual learning. I cannot wait until they get back in the classroom. Teachers, I appreciate y'all. I cannot wait for them to go
Right.
back to.
Right. How are they? Have they adapted? Pretty well. How has it been for them? Because I'm a former educator, and I talk to some of my former students. So we have some that are like, I can't stand it. I need to get back into the. I want to go back to school, even though everything is happening. And then I have some students that are like, I want to do homeschooling. I asked my mom, can I do homeschooling now? So there's so
Uh-huh.
many different, opinions when it comes down to these kids. How are your kids navigating?
They don't mind doing the school work at home, but they want to go to school to socialize. They want to be around their peers. They want that interaction with their peers. So they want to go to socialize.
Right, right, exactly. And listen, that we talked about that social connection, those
Mhm.
relationships,
Right.
they're important in our lives. So I definitely understand that. So I want to be able to jump right into our conversation. I was sharing with the audience that, of course, September is Suicide Prevention Month. And although that is a topic and a conversation that we need to have year round, and like I said,
Right.
we do use our platform year round, not just today, in order to spread awareness, but because it is Suicide Prevention Month, we wanted to dedicate this show to spread awareness into the life and the memories of those that we have lost due to suicide. And this evening, we are particularly focusing on Black youth and suicide, the
Right.
national crisis. And I shared that you are the mom of Trey Tyson, the beautiful 13-year-old student from Baton Rouge who, on October 3rd, lost his life due to suicide. I said, in honor of him, in honor of celebrating his life, which I love. And so for the audience, Trey Tyson, his name Trey is heart spelled backwards, which absolutely just melts my heart, which I love
Mhm.
so much. And that speaks so much to his mother and what he meant to her. So I said to you, because we had a long conversation on the phone a couple of days ago, that I wanted to
Right.
start this conversation off with celebrating Trey's life. And I wanted the audience to know who Trey Tyson was and to know that through the words and the eyes of his mother. So let's just start there. Share with us who your son was.
Trey is my baby boy. His name is Trey. It's hard spelled backwards. And whenever I tell somebody about him, he was everything that his name suggests. He was kind, he was loving, he was forgiving, he was goofy. He wanted to see everybody laughing and smiling. And my brother said today, he said Trey was the glue. Trey brought family together. He brought friends together. Whenever it was his birthday, he wanted a celebration with his family, or he just wanted people together, and he just wanted to be a part. He wanted to be a part of the group, and he just wanted togetherness and happiness. He was an artist. He played the cello, he played the violin, he danced. He did have beautiful curls. He was actually growing his
Beautiful.
hair. He was growing his hair to donate it. He wanted to donate his hair when he turned 18 to a child battling cancer. So That's his hair was special to him. One of his favorite stories in the Bible was the story of Samson.
And the
So
strength from his hair.
mhm. He was just a wonderful kid. I'm not exaggerating. He was a wonderful kid, and I miss him so much.
And it's when I read about him. So for the audience, just really quickly, the connection and how this came. And so again, like I've shared, we use our platform so much to raise awareness on what's happening with suicide in our communities, and particularly our Black youth, because I always say that when it happens outside of our communities, and unfortunately when it happens to a celebrity, and not to take away, because their lives are just as important. So when I say
Mhm.
that, I mean that with respect, but those are the stories that get all of the attention. And so that's why we try as much as possible to use our platform to spread awareness, right? And so our connection came because last October, when I found out about the story, I posted about Trey. He popped up on my timeline, and I didn't even know what happened at first. I was just taken aback at how beautiful he was, and to now know the backstory of his hair, because his hair was beautiful, his eyes, his smile, but his hair was growing, and it was natural and wavy and curly and just beautiful, and that's what caught my attention. And then unfortunately, I read the story, the post underneath the photo. But my organization did a ride for mental health, and we released balloons at the end and paid tribute and honor to the children who have lost their lives. And your son, Trey, happened to be one of them. And then you commented under a post
Right.
that you saw, and I shared that with you. I said I was so nervous, I cried. I said, "Oh my goodness, is this his mother?" And then I followed your page because I wasn't sure if it was someone family member, someone who knew of
Right.
him. And then I followed your page, and we started having a conversation, and here we are. And when I read the story, I said, this kid was 13 and doing so much. He was so talented and creative and full of life, and had so much going. I said, and again, playing all of the instruments. He danced. He was a part of the
Mhm.
band. And I read something also. He was helping create something for the community. I don't know if it was art. He was a part of help. He was just a part of so
Yes.
many things.
Mhm.
So many things. And that's the reason that I wanted to start this conversation with letting the world know who Trey Tyson was, what he loved to do, what his spirit was like, what brought him happiness, what are the moments and the things that his mother remembers about him that can hold a smile and some peace in her heart, with the situation that I'm a mother of a 23-year-old. And we had the conversation. I said, no, I
Mhm.
cannot imagine. I have experienced loss, but no, I cannot imagine. And no parent should, but this is
Right.
the reality of the situation. And then I spoke to you, and you said, no, I want to share the story because there are things that parents need to know. There are things that parents need to hear, because I talk often about what's happening with suicide in our community. And like we said when we spoke on the phone, the parents seem so astounded and in awe, which says that they don't know what's going on. They're not really aware and in tune of what's really happening. And when I was reading some of the statistics earlier from the research paper that the Congressional Black Caucus created, and for audiences, this information is out there. It is available. It is a 40-something page research paper that they wanted people to have the information, but it is a crisis in our
It is.
communities. And when I think of the crisis age, which is 5 to 11, but the second leading cause of death in adolescence is 10 through 13. And so I asked you on October 3rd, and we are nearing the 1 year anniversary. So for those who are listening, this is something that this just happened. This is recent. And I want to say that you are in a safe space, Rosalind. So if there's any question, any part of this conversation that you are not comfortable with, or that you want to say, okay, I don't really want to talk about that, we will skip over that. So let me say that first and foremost. Can you tell us a little bit about October 3rd? what would begin as much as you are comfortable with, what would
Mhm.
begin as a normal morning. Because let me say that Rosalind, like I said, the mother of five beautiful children, because her son is in heaven and her angel, she has four other children. So let's be clear, this is a mom who
Mhm.
has three beautiful daughters and a son, a 4-year-old, an 8-year-old, another 13-year-old, and an 18-year-old son. Share a little bit, if you can, about that day and what led to the circumstances.
Oh, October 3rd. October 3rd, I for some reason I woke up at 3 a.m. Um I didn't really get out of the bed, but I did wake up at 3 a.m. Something just had me up. And my best friend had texted me a funny video, and I responded. He's like, I didn't think you would be up. I was like, I don't know why I'm up. I feel uneasy. I just feel uneasy. And we talked for a little while. He said, well, you need to get some rest. And so I went to sleep. 6 o'clock in the morning, I heard my oldest son calling Trey's name. And that's normal. Trey's always the slowest one. He's always the reason why they missed the bus. So I didn't think anything of it until his screams changed. So he wasn't just, calling Trey's name. He was yelling, and then he started screaming. He started screaming Trey's name, and then he started screaming my name, and I was like, what is going on? So I got up, and he was just screaming Trey's name. And I thought that this Trey was so loving. I thought he was in the closet playing with some rodent or something. I didn't know what was going on. And then I just heard Trinity, my daughter Trinity, walk to the closet, and she screamed. She just screamed. And so, still not thinking the worst, because Trey has nosebleeds. I said, Trey is probably in that closet having a nosebleed right now. But I got closer, and Trinity's screams just got louder, and I can't even describe the scream. It was worse than any scream from a horror movie. I I just kept asking, what is it? And when I got to the closet, Trey was lying on the floor. I didn't realize he was lifeless. I tapped him and was like, Trey, get up. I thought he was asleep. Um, when I touched him, he was cold. And I'm a nurse, so I started, noticing some things. So I told my son to call 911. Trey wasn't breathing. He did have like little markings on his neck where something had been tied around his neck. And my daughter just kept screaming. It's like, Mom, CPR. And I had to tell her it's too late. And she screamed again. This time she
How old
screamed.
is your daughter?
So Trinity just turned 13. She and Trey were very close in age. They're a year apart. And we call them the pseudo twins because they're so close in age and they do so much together.
And they look a
And
lot alike
they
also.
do look a lot alike. They do look a lot alike. Um, I just Once I realized that Trey was gone, I just sat in the closet and I just held him in my lap. And I don't I everything kind of moved in slow motion. I just sat in the closet holding him, and I just kept saying over and over again, like, this is my baby. This is my baby. I don't really remember faces because things were moving in slow motion, but I do remember some voices of the paramedics when they came in, and they came in and said, ma'am, can I? And he stopped and he looked at me. He said, I am so sorry. Police officers came. I remember one police officer left out crying. And then another one said, ma'am, I'm sorry, but you're going to have to let him go. She's like, you're just going to have to let him go. And I just laid him back down, and I walked outside and just started I called my dad, and I said, my dad's in California. So 6 o'clock my time, 4 a.m. his time. And I said, he answered, she's like, what's going on? I said, Trey's dead. He was like, what? And I just said it so calmly because at that moment, I didn't know if I was still dreaming or just what. But I didn't realize that Trey was gone for real, for real. I saw them wheel him away. I saw them do all of that. But still, I'm a mom. I'm still hoping for the best. I'm a nurse, but nurse me went away, and it was just mom me.
Right,
I
exactly.
like I
Because you are a nurse and you
right,
also teach at a nursing
right,
university.
right. Seeing them wheel him away on the stretcher, it still really didn't hit me what was happening. I thought, they're wheeling him away. They're going to bring him back. They're going to fix him. It wasn't until I went to the funeral home with his godmother and saw him laying on the stretcher. He was cold. There was frost on his lip. They had taken to loose his hair, and I just stared at him. And I cannot describe to you the anger that I had from looking at him. And I looked at him, and then I remember talking to his godmother, and I said, "Did Trey really die?" And she said, "Yes, yes, he died. Trey died."
You asked his godmother that because, of course, that is
Right. I found out later that my son, he's 17, that he and Trey shared a room. Um he ended up sleeping, my oldest son ended up falling asleep in the den. So he wasn't in the room with Trey that night. He ended up falling asleep in the den, so he wasn't in that room that night. And I found out that my son found him first, and my son's the one who took him down.
because
So
he did not want his mother to walk in and see her son that way. And so your son, who is 17 at the time because he's 18 now.
he'll
So
be 18 on the 27th of this month.
right. So we're talking about a son who he's young. He's a 17. He's a teenager. I know he's
Mhm.
turning 18, but let's in the context, he's a teenager. And so
Yes.
not only did he find his brother, but in his head immediately, before thinking about how he feels at the moment, his thoughts immediately went to his mother and
Right.
what he can do to make this any lighter when there's no way to make this light. But in his eyes, I would rather see my mom see him laying down than to see him hanging. And what a heavy burden for a 17-year-old.
Right. Right.
And this incident stems from, and there are certain things that, and we discussed this, there are certain things that we are unable to discuss, but there are certain things that we can just for a couple of minutes touch on in regards to the fact that bullying, bullying, because I want to say it over and over again. Bullying is an issue that is happening across the country and our schools when there are tons of schools who are supposed to uphold their no bullying, zero bullying, no tolerance for bullying, but yet it is happening rampantly and rapidly throughout our school systems. And so, what we do know is that Trey was bullied a week prior in his school, and that is what led to ultimately what happened. And we do know that, as always, we have to shine the light and talk about the responsibility of the educational system to protect our children. I am a former educator, and we talked about this. I taught speech therapy. I was a speech therapist, rather, in the Board of Education. I also taught second grade. I run programs in a women and children shelter where I oversee the school-aged children's programs 5 to 17. So in the classroom and out of the classroom, I am around the children. I do workshops and conversations with them about bullying. And from the youngest at 5 years old, they have the most to say when it
Mm-hmm.
comes down to the things that they experience, the things that they see, and the things that they hear that have happened to them and others in the school. And so I just want to ask you, as a parent, again, without us going into specific detail, how do you feel, or what do you feel about the responsibility of the school system to protect our children beyond focusing on making sure that they are passing state exams and that they are being taught science, math, English, and social studies?
I think in any institution, any facility, whether at school or if they're in the hospital and nurses are taking care of them, anywhere there are adults responsible for taking care of kids. It's a partnership. And if I'm leaving them somewhere, again, whether it be school, the hospital, anywhere where there are adults who are supposed to care for our kids, it's an expectation that they do just that. And holistic care. So not just initial things, social well-being, emotional well-being, physical well-being, making sure
Right.
they're in safe spaces. So I think it's a responsibility of any adult who has kids in their care at that time.
That's right, absolutely. And you touched on something that I talk about often, social emotional learning. And the fact that educators again need to know that their responsibility before they get to even the academics is attending to the social emotional well-being of the children. It's to understanding the dynamics of all of the children that are in your classroom, their backgrounds, where they're coming from, the type of experiences that they are having, so that you create an environment that is safe, compassionate, empathetic,
Mhm.
and meets all the children where they are for all of
Right.
their needs, not just their academic needs, their emotional, their social well-being, their mental well-being. So exactly, and I think that there needs to be more done, and needs to be more advocacy, and just
Mhm.
maybe supporting parents and understanding how to even advocate for their children when it
Right.
comes down to issues like this, because there have been plenty of cases in the media once a family has filed a lawsuit or done something against the board of the Department of Education or the school system. Then you hear about these things, the proper training for the guidance counselors, what are the
Mhm.
prerequisites when there's crisis management or there are issues going on amongst the students, especially when all of the studies and the research are showing that bullying and all of these things are happening rampantly. The connection between this and suicide and all of these other things that are going on in the school. So, like I said, I know we can't speak in much detail, but I just wanted to mention that. Um, we talked about Trey having siblings, his sisters and his brothers. As a mom,
Mhm.
not only do you have to navigate through your own healing and dealing with the loss of your son, but you have four children who you have to help navigate through this also. A 4-year-old who is very young and
Mhm.
small, an 8-year-old who is at a stage of being aware, maybe not always making the connections to everything, but very much so aware of the things
Mhm.
that are happening. You have his 13-year-old sister, who that was her best friend. And then you have his 18-year-old brother who found him that morning. How have you been able to navigate, and what are some of the things that you've done to be able to navigate through the healing journey, as well as trying to, when I don't even like to use the word normalcy, because
Mhm.
what is a normal life
Right.
after this, but a space of having to adapt to new routines and those type of things. How has that been, and what has that been like? And again, especially because the variation in the ages also,
Mhm.
and the level of understanding what's happened.
It's every moment is different. Um, I can be honest and say it is something that I will never get over. I will navigate through it. I will never get over. I'm human. I'm never going to get over. As far as my 4-year-old, when we were telling her, because she was not at home at the time, she had spent the night with her grandmother. When we told her that, Trey died and he went to heaven, she said, but he was just here yesterday. And I said, I know, baby, he was just here yesterday. She said, well, we left him in yesterday. And she has no idea how profound that statement was. And she was being literal. He was here yesterday, and that's what she remembered. We left him there. We got to go back and get him. We left him.
Right, because in her mind, if he's there at yesterday, we can go and bring him to where we are now.
Hmm. Yep. My 8-year-old, for the longest was having nightmares. For the longest, she's having nightmares, breakdowns. She would look at pictures of him, and she would say, "Wait a minute, I think I heard Trey. He's here. I have to go find him." And then she would remember that Trey died, and she would have a whole nother meltdown. Her godfather has been a very good source of support. Because when I asked her, she was just crying hysterically one day, and I said, "Tiva, what's wrong?" And she said, "It's no big deal, Mama. It's nothing." And I said, "You know, Tiva, it is something." She says, "It's not important." And I was so like, that hurt so much, because I already feel like I lost one child, and I missed an opportunity somewhere for her to tell me it's not important. I called her godfather. I said, "Look, she won't talk to me, and I need some help. I cannot do this again." Um, my 13-year-old, Trey's very best friend. They were so close in age. They called themselves the pseudo twins. She still has trouble speaking his name. She A lot of Trey's things I was donating, because that's he had such a giving spirit. So a lot of the things a lot of his possessions, I was donating, and she would get so mad, and she would scream, "No, that's for my brother." I was
She
like,
didn't want you to give it away.
she didn't want me to give it away.
Because those were the connections to him. Like how,
Mhm.
as a adult, I lost my grandmother in North Carolina. My aunt, literally, who has her house now, has kept like a few of her house coats because she kept
Mhm.
the air up so high. So every time I was there, I would always go in the closet and grab some house coats. And there were just certain things that they left. And it's just
Right.
kind of thing to her, that's her memory, that's her connection
Mhm.
to him, you know.
Right.
But again, I'm sure at some point making the connection, but your brother loved to give, and so
Right.
in giving, it's a part of how we remember him as well.
Yeah. We had to bargain
Of course.
something. You said you can't have that. They
That's
can't have
right.
that, but they can have this.
That's
That's
right.
my brother.
That's right.
So,
That's right, sister. That's right.
oh yes, she doesn't talk much about him, but we did get a journal. So we have a mother-daughter journal, and we'll rewrite in that to each other. Some things she may not be able to speak, but she'll write it and close the book. My oldest son today, just today, and it's almost gone on a year. Today, I heard him. He was sitting next to me, openly said, um, "It's been hard dealing with the loss of my brother. He was the only, he was the only brother. It was just us. He was the person I was closest to, and now he's gone. So him being gone, me having to navigate through grief, having to graduate from high school, starting college, the climate, social unrest that we have, a pandemic. Um, I'm the only boy in the house, the only male in the house. I'm about to turn 18. I feel like I have the weight of the world on my shoulders." He said that today. And then he said, "But all I can do is look forward to the next day, and then the next day, and then the next day." And I got so much comfort in just hearing him openly talk, because he hasn't told me what he actually saw that morning. He hasn't he told detectives, he hasn't told me. I don't think he'll ever tell me exactly what he saw. He hasn't really talked about Trey's death to me before, but him opening up and saying that much, and then also saying, "But I'm looking forward to the next day, and then the next day, and then the next day, until I just get through it." That just gave me a lot of comfort. Um, all the kids were in counseling. That's been a big help.
I was
Kind
gonna
of
ask.
difficult.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you.
Hmm.
About I was going to ask you about therapy because that is such a stigma in our communities where we think that if we go to therapy it means that we're crazy, or therapy is only for white people to sit on the couch and just part what they're dealing with, and the therapist won't understand me and can't relate. So I was going to act that was going to be a question. Have you guys done family counseling or individual counseling, and
Right.
has that been, have you found it to be helpful for you guys as a family and for the children?
It was rocky at first because, again, there was so much anger. Because out of all people in the world, Trey, out of all people in the world, someone was mean to Trey. And out of all people in the world, he was so full of life. Of all the people in the world, Trey took his own, like Trey, like it was we still like couldn't believe it. Like, and you know what? Before, let me just say this. People don't believe things can happen to them until it happens to them. There is no certain picture of what a suicide risking kid looks like. There is none. I would have never thought, of all people, Trey would have taken his own life, especially because a week before Trey died, he said, "Mom, somebody on the bus said they wanted to kill themselves." And I said, "Well, what did you tell them, Trey?" He said, "I told them, man, don't do that. We need you here. The world needs you." And then for a week later, Trey is gone.
He said
It
that to you a week before.
a week before, and it just angered me. I was like, Trey was strong enough to tell somebody else, "No, man, we need you." And I just kept saying, "Trey, why didn't you know? Trey, why didn't you know tomorrow gets better?" But and then I was mad at him. I was so mad at him. I was just so mad. But then, like we talked about, he's 13. We talked about we're adults and we can't even
Impulsive
control
to
and
control
understand.
our emotions, because exactly, we had the conversation. How many times have I in hindsight, like, oh my god, like I lost control, or I need to get my emotions together, making sporadic irrational decisions. And we said that as adults, and yes, not to go into the whole developmental and getting all into the science, but it's real. The brain development, the part of the brain that deals with impulse control and deals with making your rational decisions and all of those type of things, it doesn't even fully develop until 25, and he was 13.
Right.
Not until 25 years old, and he was
Hmm.
13 years old. And we
Right.
talked about that, like, talking to our kids about those big emotions and how they're feeling, and when that wave of emotion comes over them, when you can go from being happy and all of a sudden you're super sad, or you've gotten angry and frustrated. And I talk to the kids that I work with, and we talk about when the heart starts beating fast, or when your stomach drops and your hands start sweating and you get a headache, how to identify and
Right.
be able to notice, okay, this is what's happening, but hold on. There are some things that I can do to control this. I can think some positive thoughts. I can take some deep breaths, and that'll kind of calm down this rush of feelings. Like, but that's why breaking that stigma, that's why having those conversations are so important. And I want to go to, there's two quotes that you said to me, but I want to touch on one. And when I posted, I quoted you when we were talking, and this is why I want to get into the parents and the message to the parents, and I want them
Hmm.
to hear it from you, a mother who has lost her son. And we talked about this. You're a nurse. You teach nursing at a university. You're trained about knowing the signs and the symptoms. And when parents ask, are there signs? Sometimes there are no signs. And parents who believe, oh, it has to be a sign or something that I have to be able to notice and see in order to think that something may be wrong or going on with my children. And that's not the case, right? And so you said to me, my hindsight can be someone else's prevention. Share what you mean by that.
I spent a lot of time reflecting. Every day I go back and I look at a text message from Trey from that day. And one particular day, Trey was upset about something. And I said, he was upset about not being invited to a party. And I said, well, does that make you upset? And he said, no, not really. I said, okay, well, good. And he's like, well, Mom, can we have family time instead? Can we watch movies? I said, yes, of course. He said, okay, thank you. I love you, Mama. And that sounds like a simple conversation. Sounds very simple. Looking back, I may have missed an opportunity because when I asked him, does that make you upset? He said, not really. And I moved on. Not really. If he was 100% okay with not being invited or being rejected or being shut out, the answer would have been no, not really. So that extra, and I'm very intentional now. Um, Even with my kids, that's what, even with T, when she said it's not important, no, yes, it is. We're going to talk about it. So I'm very intentional now, making sure, especially even with my 17 going on 18-year-old, for him to make the statement, I feel like I have the weight of the world on my shoulders, and him making Trey presentable before I saw him because he was worried about me. I need children to know you are never a burden. It is never not important. And as parents, sometimes we may not realize that maybe we're giving that off to kids, or maybe they're watching our actions and like, well, okay, well, I can't do this to Mama today, or I can't do this. Mama's having a. We just have to create that moment, that moment. We have an anti-bullying walk coming up to also to honor Trey's memory. And Trey was 13. He died 10/3, which equals 13. And so I'm challenging people, just starting at 3 o'clock on October 3rd, take 13 minutes. 13 minutes to stop and talk to your kids. 13 minutes to stop and listen to them.
I'm
13
writing that down
minutes.
because I'm gonna go on live before that and repeat this information again. October 3rd, we're taking
Mhm.
13 minutes.
13 minutes just to talk, to dig, because that I missed it, and it may not have changed things, but just being able to dig deeper. And because of that, because I went back and reflected, because I realized that I am not perfect, I don't care how many degrees I have, that doesn't shut me out of the fact that one of my kids could commit suicide, because one did, he's gone, and I'm reminded of that every day. And I have a lot of people, please don't tell me about it, please don't tell me it, oh, don't say that word, the S word. What, sex? No, 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 I'm okay with that. Don't say suicide. Oh, because it makes you
Suicide,
uncomfortable.
suicide. And when you said that to me, and I said, that's what we have to stop the conversation. I said, if we have an adult, whether they are a parent or not, that feels uncomfortable with having the conversation around suicide, I am afraid for our children. If the adults are feeling that way. But we are here, Rosalind and I are here to say that children, our beautiful children who may have amazing things going on for them, our children are committing suicide. There are things that are going on, from bullying to things in the household to things in the community, and just all of the things that we are experiencing that weigh heavy on our children. The same way we stay up at night worried and concerned about things, those little beautiful
Saw that.
precious minds, they stay up late at night worried about things too. When we care about whether we're speaking to our girlfriend or not, and if something happened with one of our friendships and relationships, they struggle over their relationships with their peers too. If we struggle as adults, what do you think they feel like as children?
Right.
So we're going to
Hmm.
say the word suicide, as uncomfortable as it is, as painful as it is, because what we do not want is for another mother like Rosalind to have to bury a child. So as
Right.
uncomfortable as it is, we're going to keep on pushing the message until you guys get that there is an urgency. This is, Rosalind and I are joining together. It's a call to action, Totality Tribe. It's a call to action. Rosalind, please share with us. Also, we talked about keeping the memory alive, celebrating the legacy and the life of Trey. And like I said, we're going to talk about this again because we want everybody, I'm talking about across the country, to join in on October 3rd to take 13 minutes to talk to your children. We will do another reminder. But as a part of keeping Trey's memory alive and celebrating his life, you have started the Trey Have a Heart Foundation. Please share some information about that, where we can support and how we can support.
Okay. Our website is currently under it's being developed now, but we do have our Facebook page, Trey Thyssen Have a Heart. Trey's heart spelled backwards. Also on Instagram, Trey Thyssen Have a Heart. We Our main goal is to make sure that we bring awareness to bullying, we bring awareness to suicide, youth suicide, we bring awareness in order to bring prevention. And our goal is to try our best to get people to understand that a lot of times the first thing that we need to do is to have a heart. That's the first thing we need to do, is we need to have a heart. Um, Bullying, what can stop bullying? Having a heart, being kind, being forgiving, just starting with having a heart. What can end suicide? Having a heart, taking that time, 13 minutes, starting the conversation. Someone, you ask them, hey, how you doing? I could be better. No, don't say, oh yeah, girl, me too. No, stop. What could be better? How can I help you be better? Because I'm telling you, there is no pain. And I don't mean to keep up bringing the pain, but for you, it's a conversation. For me, it's my reality.
That's right.
There is no pain like seeing a casket close on the face of your baby forever. Someone that you thought you would see forever. There is no pain like seeing that. No pain. And I honestly, it doesn't get easier. I learned how to navigate through it. Instead of being angry, because anger can do one or two things. It can consume you and kill you, or it can propel you forward. I still have 4 other kids that I have to be here for. So I have to live. I can't survive. I have to live. And in order for me to live, I have to take the things that my 13-year-old son taught me. He taught me about forgiveness. Now I'm human. I am still human and I'm working on some things, but he taught me how to forgive. He taught me how to love and how to love unconditionally. And one thing that I can do to ensure that my baby stays in everyone's memory is to make sure that no other mother, no other sister, no other uncle, friend endures the type of pain that we have endured, because it doesn't go away. When someone commits suicide, that pain does not go away. It echoes through generations. I'm going to feel this forever. Trinity's going to feel this forever. Chloe, her 4-year-old self, is going to feel this forever. And so I just want to make sure people understand what it means to have a heart and what it means to ignore bullying, what it means to ignore suicide, because it's me today. It may be you tomorrow. I know that sounds harsh, but today it was me. Yesterday it wasn't me. Yesterday it was somebody else. Today it's me. Tomorrow it can be you. So I don't want this for you. I don't want this on my worst enemy. So all Miss Carnegie is asking, all we are wanting to do is band together to save our babies. Because it's not just a white issue. Our Black babies are dying too.
That's right. And 2 times the rate of their white counterparts. And let's be clear, suicide rates are declining in other races and ethnicities, and it is at crisis levels. Again, like I said, the Congressional Black Caucus launched this emergency task force because of the fact that it is crisis levels, and the crisis age is 5 to 11. I want to be able to give a little bit of information on suicide website and hotline before we go. Again, October 3rd, Totality Wellness Inc., and we are asking the entire tribe and everybody from the audience that is watching to spread the word. We're going to come back on live and talk about it again. But October 3rd, no matter where you are across the country, we are banding to support the legacy, the life of Trey Tyson, and all the other children that have lost their lives and the children whose lives we want to save by taking 13 minutes. Parents, adults, taking 13 minutes to talk to your children. You can also follow the Trey Tyson Have a Heart Foundation on Instagram and Facebook to find out how that you can support. Rosalind, I want to ask you quickly if there is a message that you would like to leave to the parents, and we're going to do more things together. You have not seen the last of us because Rosalind and I are going to collaborate, and we're going to continue pushing this mission of raising awareness, not just in September for Suicide Prevention Month, but year round, and we promise you that. If there is a message that you would like to leave to the parents, please.
For the parents, again, let my hindsight be your prevention. Let my hindsight be your prevention. And also to the children, to the adolescents, to the teens, and also to parents who may be going through any type of negativity, even any type of grief, sorrow, bullying, whatever it is. In that moment, I know it is hard, it's painful, but please know tomorrow gets better. I promise you. I promise you tomorrow gets better. But you have to be here. You have to be here. So keep living, keep breathing, and just have a heart.
And that is something that you resonate on your page a lot. Tomorrow gets better, but you have to be here and keep having a heart. We are on our countdown, Rosalind. We are going to continue to keep you and your beautiful family in our prayers. You have our unwavering support to make sure that no one ever forgets the name and the life of your son, Trey Tyson, and we will celebrate him. I want to say to everybody that is watching, if you are someone that you know is contemplating suicide or going through any mental health issues and crisis, you can contact the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-8255. You can also, if you're dealing with any mental health issues, contact New York City Well. That is 188-NYC Well, and you can text Well to 65173. I'd also like to give a special shout out to Rebecca for Therapy from Young People. We have partnered with them, and they have given us 10 My Yap passes, which are passes for access to free therapy for adolescents aged 13 to 24. So if you know someone who you would like to refer, or you yourself are old enough to make that decision, please reach out to us at totalityofawoman@gmail.com, and we will connect you with My Therapy for Young People. Ladies and gentlemen, you are worthy. Your life matters. Your life counts. In the words of Rosalind, tomorrow is a better day, but we need you to be here so that you can see and that you can understand that. Please make sure you follow Trey Have a Heart Foundation. And October 3rd, we're taking 13 minutes out to talk to your children. I will continue to pray for you. I ask that you all continue to pray for Rosalind and her family.